respectful relations.
I realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Welcome to the day after the election. Welcome back to Backfire this morning with John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey, and of course myself, Steve Doveball Hickson, and my chief engineer, Daniel Brantley. Hey. All right, today's today. What happened yesterday in the election, guys? Bring me up to date.
Was that yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh.
Wasn't it?
Yep.
Well, the sheriff was the big upset.
Was.
It was hard fought and hard contested.
1,100 votes when it was over with.
Right.
That's
About
pretty big spread.
54% roughly. So,
What was the next upset? Dan Ross lost.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is all of both the people that were sort of had stirred a lot of the issues ended up getting beat. Dwayne Hicks, the constable, got beat, and Dan got beat as well. And then Sheriff Watson got beat. So
that's a good insight. All the folks who've been involved in some controversy over the years.
both sides of that issue, you know, you obviously had people on both sides of that, and you would normally think, well, one of them gets beat, the others would be vindicated and would be reelected, but everybody got beat.
Was what did the A and B vote, or how was it work?
It worked fine. I mean, it's the way every other race has always worked. Instead of having.
But that's what caused some of these candidates to get beat, wasn't it?
I mean, no.
It's hard to say. I don't actually know that.
The problem is with the previous system where you voted for the top two. You can't compare the two really, because these same people very easily could have been out of the top two in the previous system. As I believe Commissioner Romanger was not second, was he? I think he was
third.
Third.
I think.
So he wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have come through the previous system either.
Mm-hmm.
But this allowed people to say, "I'm running for this seat. I'm running against Joe or Frank," instead of, "Well, I'm running against whoever happens to be the top vote getter."
Who was the surprise for you, John?
Well, I mean,
Who was
I don't know that there's a surprise for that as much as the margins in some of the cases.
Yeah, I couldn't find anybody through this whole thing that really wanted to. People would speculate, but if you ever, I'm not a betting person, but if you ask them to put money down, no one really wanted to put any money down on any of these things because no one knew how it was going to shake out. And I think what we said just a minute ago is evidence. When you have obviously a divide between a certain group and another group, and both of them, all of them get beat on both sides of the claims and issues. A lot of people said, the public just doesn't like discord. They don't like the ugliness.
Tell us what you think.
I think you'd be hard-pressed to make the argument that all the negative attention over the last year or so hadn't had some effect on the election. I think no matter where you come down on that, I think that has to have been a factor.
So you're talking about in the sheriff's race?
Yeah.
Like the car titles and
all the issues that have come up, over the last year or so. I think it must have had some impact.
I think the biggest issue that may have cost the sheriff race was his wife involved in the what do you call that? The bail bonding. Yeah, that seemed to be a big issue that got a lot of attention, and why the sheriff she stayed right in there. She's still a bail bondsman, so I guess that's the way they wanted it. But I think that probably cost the election for the sheriff, was on the bail bonding issue.
Well, I mean, let me say this though. I've known and worked with Eric for years in elections, and losing is really tough. This is the worst part of everybody's campaigning, everybody's upbeat. You have to believe that even if things are not looking great, you still believe that you're doing it for the right reasons and that you're going to be vindicated, and then the election happens. And if you're on the losing end of that, it's really, really tough. So it's always hard for me to go and the winning side, hopefully the winning side, and that's what I saw mostly everywhere I went last night, was just happy for themselves. But sometimes you'll go and there'll be people that'll be happy that the other person lost, and I think that's a really crappy human emotion, because whether you were for someone or against someone, voted for them or didn't vote for them, losing something like this publicly is hard, and I think people deserve some care and concern and prayers in their loss.
It's interesting. This is, at least in modern times around here, it's kind of an unusual development. I think this is the first time I'm aware of that we've had 3 consecutive one-term sheriffs.
That may be true.
It was
Dan was in
Gobble, Ruth, and now what?
I think Dan was in 16 years or maybe more.
At least 12, maybe 16.
Yeah. So a lot of rolling over. And by the way, Dan, apparently, I had somebody remind me that Dan Rawls voted against funding for Lake Forest. And that's, in his district, and that may have been an issue there as well.
Well, I mean, he got beat big.
Well, but now keep in mind, the Masons are a long-term, moving force in not just Republican Party in Bradley County, but in government. Ralph, his father, held 2 positions, county commissioner and school board member. So they're an old line, solid Republican activist family. And obviously, people that win generally work hard. I think Dan worked really hard. I think Tim worked really hard. And Tim came out ahead.
A lot of new faces on the commission, though.
That is true.
And that's not a reflection on their opponents when I say that, but new blood is often a good thing. We have a builder, we have a teacher.
And the builder, Dennis Epperson, that was the last race called. That was a close race.
It was only about 100 votes or so.
Tell me which races you're talking about now.
Well, county commission races.
Okay.
Dennis Epperson, who's a builder in the area. So we now have a couple of builders on the council.
Well, I'd like to point out we have more educators. It's always amazing if you're in private business. People go, well, we need to be careful about these builders. Or I know.
I mean, that way.
But I hear that, and then I look and I go, well, you got a whole lot more people that actually work for the government on the commission. Some of us worry about that as well.
Well, I think it's a good thing that we have educators on there. I think it's a good thing that you have builders on there.
So, I agree.
So, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have new blood from time to time coming on to these bodies. So.
I tell you, one of the ones that people were really impressed with, Erica Davis, going on by a really handy margin. That was not a close race down there.
And which?
That was in 6 as well. Now, one of the real nail biters, Jeff Yarber, had a really tough time. He came close to being turned off the commission this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just
I hadn't heard much about that race. Who was it?
He didn't have an opponent.
I was fixing to say.
Just giving Jeff a hard time.
I was fixing to say I hadn't heard anything about that. So,
well, the less heard about Jeff, the better.
Yeah.
You're going to call in, Jeff, or not just put up with that?
614-5553.
Well, there's a lot of people that feelings were hurt this morning, I guess, but there's a lot of victors that are celebrating. So, I guess we'll move on. What do you think the biggest upset was in the election?
Well, I think the margin in the sheriff's race surprised a lot of people. Most people thought it would be within a couple hundred votes either way. Now, when early voting came in, that was, and I was up in Monroe County until late, and the same thing up there. When early voting came in, you pretty much saw the trend right there, because I think up there they were saying early voting may have been up to 75% of the vote. I haven't seen what it was down here, but it's pretty high.
15,000 and something total, just a little over 15,000 and 96.
So it's only about 66%.
Something like that.
Down here.
You know, it's pretty amazing, really. Our population, what is it?
Well, the metropolitan area, we're over 100,000 at this point, but that includes parts of Polk County.
We're
and
over
stuff like that.
100,000 for Bradley County.
So we had 15,000 vote.
Oh, well,
That's pitiful.
no, it's not. It's not a good number.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
not.
Well, let me
It's
ask you.
around 12 to 15%.
Let me ask you this. When is there's another race coming up right now. You got the mayor's
That's
race.
in August.
That's in August.
That's
Okay.
in August.
Why is it held back? Why wouldn't it be
Well, they
held
don't
as
have
a-
primaries there, so
Yeah.
so it'll be at the same time as the general election for.
And I would say, I mean, Franklin probably knows because he helped set up the form of government, but it's probably in the charter. I think they can choose when they do it.
But I mean, it's set up in the charter to be at that time. So.
But that would.
But it's run at the same time as the.
I mean, they
other
could
elections
have.
going on.
Here's
So
one of the
it's not
things: they
special.
could have had it now, probably if they'd wanted to set it up in the charter. But this May primary is not always as reliable. The August primary is always there, and
Because
so
it's
you
always a state election.
you don't want to end up with a primary or an election by itself that you have to foot the bill
You
for.
have to pay for, right?
That's what I was getting at. So, in August, it's the state election.
State primary,
It's the state primary.
State and federal.
right?
So what all will we be voting on in August?
Governor, senator,
Well,
Congress.
the primaries. You'll vote
Primaries.
for a Republican and a Democrat nominee in the governor's races and in the U.S. Congress races. All of those things would determine who will be on the November ballot.
Except for the city.
Except for the city and-
they're non-party elections.
Well, and then you've got, in my case, I'm running for state Republican Executive Committee. That'll be settled in August. The Democrats have.
Oh,
election
great!
as
Now
well.
we got to give equal time to the other candidate. Thanks
No.
for bringing that up, John.
Are you the other candidate?
No,
No.
no, I'm not.
In my race, it's only Republicans. And there's a Democrat race as well. Jimmy Bilbo has been the state Democrat Executive Committee man. I understand Jimmy's not running again this time. So,
Seems like the rest of these Democrats are starting to go the other way.
well, I try to be nice. 4 years ago, I told him I was up at a debate up in Monroe County, and I speak pretty strongly about gun issues and pro-life issues. And these three ladies came up and jumped me, and they said, "We don't like what you said. We're Democrats." And I said, well, that's fine. I'm running for a Republican Party job. But I tell you what, Jimmy Bilbo's a really nice guy, and he's running to represent you all, and you all can vote for him. So I actually threw in a campaign pitch for him to his constituents. Yes. I don't know. We'll have to see. 28%
We're talking about
tax.
city council if you have a dead one.
One of the problems, though, Daniel, is several of the people that voted for that are not on the ballot.
What now?
Well, Richard Banks is retiring. Richard
Right.
voted for the tax increase. Several of them aren't on the ballot this time. It's like, for example,
Who's not on the ballot?
Well, Richard Banks is not running.
Okay.
So his seat will come up.
All right.
Avery will not be on the ballot
That's my understanding. So his seat will.
because they rotate. They're offset.
Yeah.
They're
Um,
offset.
Yeah. And then, of course, the mayor's race will be coming up.
So you got a lot
none
of
on the
people that
ballot.
weren't. You got people on the ballot that didn't take a vote. So you've got to, the public, I think, should be asking them, by the way, what do you think about a 28% tax increase? And what do you think about the fact that the city manager just a few weeks ago said that he didn't think that was enough? He needed more.
No, that's not what he said.
He said
He didn't say
it
that.
was going to be a tough year and that compared to surrounding communities, our tax rate was too low. Now, that's less than 6 months after
He didn't
raising
say
taxes.
our tax rate was too low. He said it's low compared to the other.
Well, how do
That's
you-
a different thing.
That's not not a different thing,
Yes,
Franklin.
it is.
That's a lawyerly.
No, it's not. It's a completely
If you
different
say
thing.
compared to the surrounding areas, our tax rate is
Well,
low.
one of them is bragging on us,
wait a
and one
minute.
of them is
While
complaining
you're
about it.
bemoaning the fact that you don't feel like you've got enough money, maybe you can't read between the lines, but that's saying we need more taxes.
One of them's bragging on us, and one of them's complaining about us. It's two different things. It's not parsing words. That's completely different sentiment. Now, I'm not saying that the way it was said, he shouldn't have said it that way. That's a different thing.
All right,
but I
tell you
didn't
what,
hear him
folks.
say that our taxes are too low and we need more.
I tell you
That's
what,
not what he
folks,
said.
when someone raises your taxes 28% and less than 6 months later says, boy, it's going to be really tough because we just don't have enough money and our tax rate is so low compared to surrounding communities, I will leave it up to the public to decide whether that indicates they think the taxes are too low.
I've already heard they're talking about a tax increase again next year.
28% and less than a damn year, they're going to raise our taxes again.
Agree or disagree? Call and tell us. 614-5553.
You know, they've got, we're growing. Hey, we're growing, John, and they got to have this money to fix everything.
That argument makes me so angry.
I know.
If you all could manage your stuff, the growth should pay for itself. That's the whole point. How can you sell that on both ends? How can you go out and go, we need to grow, so we have assets to, improve.
Well,
and then when you do grow, go, oh gosh, we need to raise taxes because we grew.
I got a feeling they're saying that we've got to have more tax money because we've got to grow before we grow.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
improve before we
When I
grow.
was up there arguing against this, and I suggested they take any excess reserves and they pay down on the debt, and I was quickly informed that they had to hire a consultant to decide whether that was a good idea or not. Maybe if you need a consultant to know that paying down the debt is a good thing, perhaps you shouldn't be on the city council.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be the city manager.
Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out paying down the debt's a good thing. And by the way, we still have not gotten an answer from them that they actually used the old appraisal numbers to set the rate.
Say that again.
All right. When we have a reappraisal, they actually get a total. Here's the total value of all the assets, the taxable assets in the city. And they take that amount and they say, well, we need to raise X number of dollars, so we've got to divide this amount by whatever rate will give us the money we're looking for. Well, if you use a low number on your total value, then you end up with a higher tax rate. And when you apply that higher tax rate to the actual assets, which are higher than they estimated, you bring in more money than you estimated. Now, I know they used a low number because Stanley Thompson hadn't released the new number when they set the rate. And they've been asked that, and they have not responded to that. So the estimate out of Stanley Thompson's office is they will actually have $2 million more than they estimated they're going to have in this tax increase. So, City Council, you want to be fair to us? Why don't you answer that question? Are you, in fact, going to have $8 million new dollars or only $6 as you estimated? And if you do have $8 million, what are you going to do with the extra $2 million?
City Council people. 614-5553.
Well, they wouldn't answer that when they raised our taxes. I know the question's been pressed. They still haven't answered it.
Franklin's not answering it either.
Well, Franklin's not
No,
part of this. I'm not fussing at him
I think
this time.
John makes a perfectly valid point there about the amount of revenue coming in and where it goes. That's never a bad discussion.
And by the way, they were informed that their number was low. They knew before they raised taxes that they were using the old values. Stanley was doing the appraisal and had not released the new values.
Well, they got plenty of money now. How long
Not according to the city manager.
How long do you think it'll take them to spend it?
Well, it's very easy to spend other people's money. Always is.
Oh, well, anything you guys want to talk about this morning? Particularly?
Well, does Franklin want to defend the Washington Correspondence Dinner comedian?
No, but I also think that it's very difficult in this climate for the Republican Party in general to take shots at anybody about lowering the level of public discourse, given the way the president talks about people. So, I think that was the best thing.
I think the president's pretty much said things that were right down to the center of the road.
Then there's no room to criticize a comedian for taking shots.
Let's take a call here. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, good morning. I'm enjoying the discussion, enjoying your program, listen to it every week, and that's what you get when you bring people in from outside and you don't know what they're going to do, you know. I'm an old man, as far as I'm concerned, they can ship the city manager, you know. We wasn't having tax increases before he came.
Well, I'm probably in an odd position. After just having chewed on him, I'll defend him. I think he was brought in and told by the city council that that's what they wanted him to do. That's why he was brought here. So he's probably doing the job they asked him to do.
I think you can go back and look where he came from and see the pattern that we're going to be headed.
So I don't fault him. I think he's doing what they wanted him to do. My problem is we elected them.
And that's the way the system's supposed to work. There has accountability, and the city council decides whether to hire and fire the city manager, and you can decide whether to hire and fire the city council.
Well, we apparently got one man on there, Charlie McKenzie, and he's going to vote for no tax increase every time. And unfortunately, we had one that was out sick, I think, and wasn't there to vote on the tax increase.
Mr. Hughes was not.
I appreciate your program and really enjoy it.
Well, now let me point out too. David May voted no. David was a no vote. Right.
And Charlie McKenzie was a no vote.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Well, tell me how you figure the 28%. I'm not up on that. Talk about that a little, what it was and what it is, and how we get 28%.
Well, they two things happened. They were actually, I think, being disingenuous with their public numbers, and unfortunately, the Cleveland Daily Banner participated in misinforming the public. When you have an appraisal, by state law, city and county is not allowed to allow a reappraisal, if it goes up, to be a tax increase. So at the time, if I remember...
In other words, when your property value goes up, during the reappraisal, the rate comes down, which is what happened.
Right. By law, it has to come down. So Stanley did a reappraisal. He figures up the average increase, and they have to adjust the rate down for that. So I think now this has been 6 months, so maybe I'm wrong on a penny, but I think it was a $1.66 rate. They had to lower it to $1.60 by law, which they technically did for all of about 5 minutes, and then they raised it to $2 and what was it, 4 cents or something like that.
Something like that.
And unfortunately, the Banner and the people up there kept using the $1.66 and saying, "Oh, we only raised it from $1.66 to $2.04." No, you raised it from $1.60 to $2.04. And when you figure that, it was a 28% increase. Now, they tried to kind of, it really wasn't 28%, but total it was, 43 cents, a 43-cent increase from that adjusted number.
You still there, caller?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think Stanley's got a hard job on all these appraisals, and it's quite interesting. It's very difficult, but I think he's doing a good job. Apparently, he is, or no one ran against him.
Well, there's no job that's more thankless than the property appraiser's job. We all like to think about, we want our economy to do well. If our economy's doing well, then our property values are going up. But nobody likes it when their property values go up until for them to sell their property, and now they want them up. So he gets it in both directions. So that's a really tough job.
Caller, let me ask you a question. Would you rather your license plate registration go high or pay more in taxes?
I think that the license plate registration should go up instead of paying more in taxes, because we've got all these people moving in here and living in these apartments, and they're paying tax basically is included in their rent. I mean, the owner has to pay that, but we got thousands of people living in here that just all they're paying is the sales tax, and they would have to pay it. And another thing, Lee University's done a great job here. They bring in a lot of money, but every time they've expanded, they take property off the book, and they've expanded from 20 acres to 100 acres. And look at all the property that's been taken off the books right there. Now, I'm for Lee. I went to Lee, and it's a good thing, but still yet, it's taken a lot of income from the city and the county.
Well, actually, I'll say this about Lee. It's taken some of the lower income areas, and it's improved the area. And I think
but you don't get any tax off of it.
Well, I think
Improved or not.
But you do.
Let me finish. At some point in time, the renovation around the Lee University
Improves.
campus is
I
gonna
don't
improve,
disagree.
And,
which will increase
also,
the tax base.
all those, the growth in Lee, all those students are spending money while they're here too.
I don't disagree, but let me interrupt one thing about this, the tag. I understand the tag issue, and I'm not really entering into that debate about people that are renting aren't paying their fair share, and I understand that. But every time you do that conversation, if you do it without a discussion of is spending at the appropriate level, then you're just giving them a pass. So, anytime we look at revenue, we ought to be looking at, hey, where are we spending money, and should we continue to be spending money there?
Well, look at our government. Does it do it?
No. No,
That's
of course not.
It's easy to spend somebody else's money, right?
Yeah, but that's my point. They'll go, oh, well, where are we going to get this revenue? Well, that's assuming you need the revenue. Maybe, for example, and I know I'll get in trouble for this, but education. We spend more on education than almost every other country in the world, and yet we're not at the top of the ranks. Well, a business person, if they're running a business and they say, look, I spend all this money on my product, but I don't sell as much as the guy next door who doesn't spend as much, then a businessman would go, maybe I need to look at my process. Maybe I need to look at where the money is spent. I had this discussion with Dr. Haidt before he left Cleveland State when we were fighting over income tax. And, of course, all the education people, any of us who were opposed to an income tax said, oh, you're against education. And I went to him and I said, look, here's the problem. It's not that we don't spend enough money. It's that the money's not spent in the right ways and in the right places. And so when you fight someone like me that's against the income tax, I'm not against helping education. I just don't think the pie is divided up right. What you're doing is you're empowering the very same people who are dividing the pie poorly now to continue to divide a bigger pie. Well, yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Let me say one last thing and kind of change the subject a little bit. I called into the other show and said that I wish the city would buy that property that's west of the museum. And talking about planning ahead a lot of times.
Are you talking about the park?
No, I think you would be talking about the area where the old dry cleaners is.
Where the dry cleaners is.
Okay.
The museum ever wants to expand,
Mm-hmm.
or if they need more parking, or they maybe could tear down part of that building, keep part of it, and have parking. But if the museum wants to expand, if they can, they should buy it now before somebody else grabs it up, and then later on decide that they want it or need it, and then have to pay an exorbitant price for it.
Well, the problem I see there is it was a cleaners, and it was a working cleaners, and
There's contamination
there's
issues.
contamination issues that are going to be a large cost to someone.
Well,
at some point in time.
but before we just let them get away with that too. Why is it an issue? Because we got an EPA that thinks it's their place to micromanage everything. There's a site in St. Louis that we have spent billions of dollars incinerating the dirt. The same type of site in France that was contaminated just as bad with just the same thing. They put a foot of dirt over it, made a public park out of it, and there's been no increases in cancer or anything around it. So the reason that piece of land where the cleaner's at is a no man's land is because of our stupid, overactive federal regulations.
Let me tell you something about the federal regulations on that. The village here was tied up in that when Alan first bought it. And there's companies that go in and they're supposed to monitor this stuff. Well, they get money from the Fed to do this. So they're not going to close it down. I mean,
Yeah, what happens if you're being paid to monitor something to see if it's safe?
Right.
When it becomes safe, guess what? You're not going to get paid anymore.
So they don't make it
So it's
safe.
never safe.
They just keep it that way. It's amazing. It's just amazing how they get the money from the feds on that.
My understanding is that the city of Cleveland bought a piece of property there on First Street where cleaners used to be, and I don't know that they knew they had to clean it up. But
They did not have to clean it up. In fact, that one was determined to not be.
Which one?
It's where Superior Cleaners was on First Street, down there where the Taylor Springs is, the little park they're developing down there.
Yeah, I understand that the city had to pay a lot of money to clean that up.
No, it did not, and I can vouch for that one personally because I was involved in what happened there, and there was no contamination in that site.
That wasn't a working cleaners there.
Yes, it was.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay, well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking my call. My name's Edward, and I've enjoyed it very much.
All right, Edward.
you.
Thanks for calling again.
Well, let me ask, obviously I'm ignorant of the process. What do you do with do dry cleaners pour stuff out on the dirt? I mean, I understand a filling station, when they had the metal tanks, the metal eventually, becomes weakened and it leaches out into the soil. What exactly are you doing in a dry cleaning that gets into the soil?
Same thing. They had storage tanks, and they poured stuff down in there.
So it's the same issue.
You also had drains, and drains fail from time to time. Yeah.
Let's take another call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Good morning, Steve, gentlemen.
Good morning.
This is David Benton. How are y'all today?
Fine, David. How are you?
David.
Fine. Just listen a little bit. Got a few minutes to jump in, throw my 2 cents worth in. But let me say off the bat, I appreciate you guys taking time for local issues. Now, we get this national, federal stuff 24/7 on the networks and the internet, TV and all. But I really, really appreciate, Steve, y'all taking at least half of your show this morning talking about local issues. I wish you'd do it every week.
Well, we would if we had enough to talk about.
Well,
it's kind of boring around here most of the time.
Yeah, really, sure thing. But some of the numbers that John's mentioned, I want to go back on them. I think we got a little bit wrong. John, let me run this by you.
Sure.
You don't agree with me that the tax rate in the city was $1.77 per $100.
Okay, 77. Sorry.
And they wanted to raise it 29 cents to 206. Then in the meantime, they had the property appraisal that went up, 10, 11% across the board. And, of course, you can't raise tax revenue by increasing the value of your property by state statute. So they had to lower the tax rate down to a level where you raise the same amount of revenue as you did last year at the lower rate. And they lowered it down to $1.61. Now, if that's the numbers I remember.
Right. I think you're right, David. I was wrong.
Yeah, but here's the point is they went ahead and raised it from $1.61 to 206.
Right, but when they reported it, they tried to claim they only raised it from $1.77.
Yeah,
and that's how they were trying to mislead the public.
Well, it went from a 29-cent increase to a 45-cent increase per $100, and the banner printed 29 on the headlines.
Right.
I'm still waiting for them to print a correction of their mistake. It was not a 29-cent increase; it was a 45-cent increase.
Well, I asked about that, and I did get a yes, it was a mistake. And when I asked when you're going to correct it, we're not.
Yeah. Well, that's the way they deceive the people, taxpayers around here. And I do appreciate Charlie McKenzie and David Mays' no votes, and it was 4-2. I was at the meeting with you, John. It was very interesting. They had, like you said, they had their minds made up.
Oh yeah.
What we were going to say or what they did, they had their minds made up to begin with. But it's just the idea that they snookered the people, and the people still don't know what happened to them.
Well, apparently they're getting ready to do it again.
That's what I hear. And they made it retroactive back to January 1st, 2017.
Well, we tried to discuss that too. If you have rental property, your taxes your rent had already been collected, and then they make it retroactive. Yeah. So now that's just like reaching into a property owner's pocket and taking money out, because he can't get that back. On top of the fact that you can't raise your rent 28% in 1 year.
Yeah, my mother's home went up 29.5% in property value overnight, and she's lived the same place for 63 years. And I made the point that 2/3 of your city taxes, approximately 2/3 in county, go to education, and it always has. And I made the comment, Steve, you know, feel like my little brother. The last of my mother's children to graduate from Cleveland High School was 1973. But yet she's still paying 100% property tax rate for her children that had graduated 40, 45 years ago. I said, when did she get...
Well, she should have rethought having all those children, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. She thought she was going to have more grandchildren.
When did she get her children's education paid for? That's the point. And of course, Commissioner Estes said, they thought everybody should pay from now on forever. Well, it boils down to the more children you have, the better deal you get.
Well, that's true.
People don't have any children. They're paying for people that have children's education. They don't have any of their own.
And let me just preemptively strike something. By state law, education funding cannot be lowered. No matter what you hear by politicians and by people in the education establishment, they never get their money lowered. You can't legally lower it.
Well, the other main points that came out of that meeting, John, you remember this, was the debt that's incurred up to that point, the city and the county. This really shocked me, and the people don't know this. At that time, they said the city of Cleveland was about $90 million in debt. Yeah, Mr. Five says $90 million in debt. These Cleveland Utilities, $75 million in debt, which is a government entity of sorts. Bradley County's what, $75 million in debt, and both of them are adding a new school each on top of the pile. And of course, then they went and bought the Cherokee Hotel, and now they're wanting to put a park downtown. The spending never ceases. You made a very good point, John. They were raising extra revenue off of this than they counted for, and you made the point that they should pay down the debt, and they have no provision for paying down the debt whatsoever.
Well, if you remember, Dave, we asked them in that meeting, will you go on the record of at least committing to taking excess revenue and either giving it back in the form of lowering the rate or paying it on the debt? Nobody would make that commitment.
No. They all knew they had a extra fund to spend, and they were going to spend it.
Well, the bad part is they actually made the pitch, hey, guys, look, if this raises more, we can take the excess and pay it on the debt. But when I got up and said, fine, take a vote on that, oh, no, we don't want to commit to it.
Oh, my goodness. It's just a mess. But I really, really appreciate you guys taking time this morning for local issues. And, Steve, I wish you'd do this every week.
Well, I'll tell you what. How about you become our local reporter on local business?
I'll come up with some things that you guys can talk about. If it never gets printed, I'll try to do that.
All right.
But, hey, thanks, guys.
See you later. Bye-bye. All right, we've got to take a break. We'll be back in just a few.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we don't just sell cars, we buy them. Bring your car, truck, or SUV down to Buy Here, Pay Here USA, and we'll give you a free appraisal with no obligation. We pay top dollar for most cars, so before you trade in your vehicle, come see us for an appraisal. At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we pay the most for your car. Visit Buy Here, Pay Here USA in Cleveland, Dayton, or Chattanooga, or go to buyheresellhere.com. That's buyheresellhere.com. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, them, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee. 400-5376.
We're here at the Trane Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
Inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Trane AC unit. Clearly, it's hard to stop the train.
Ready for a heating and air unit that's been tested in the harshest environments possible? Stop thinking about the other guys and get a Trane. Call Mechanical Systems today to get your home on the road to comfort. 336-5739.
Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop in your cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right. Every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Whoop FM.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back live in the studio. I guess we've talked about the local politics this morning. I want to get in just to a few things. What do you think about the North and South Korea peace meeting coming up?
I think that when the Nobel Committee is forced to give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize, if this works out, liberal heads will explode all over the world.
Well, if it works out, I'll gladly give the president the Nobel Peace Prize. I haven't seen evidence yet that it's going to work out, just because we've been down this road before.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been given to, it's not that big of a deal anymore, is it?
Well,
what is the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, it's a bunch of liberals over in socialist Europe that give it to their friends and buddies, and that's the problem. They have so devalued the prize, and to be honest, the creme de la creme was the Nobel Prize to Obama. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't have earned it, but you give it to him, what was it, Franklin?
6
a month
months
into his tenure, 2 months into his tenure. It was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment, frankly, for Obama to be proud of it was an embarrassment, but it was an embarrassment to the Nobel Committee.
I guess they gave it to him because he was the first black president.
Well, he was aspirational. They just said it was just so aspirational that he had been elected.
So, I don't know if Trump would even want the Nobel Peace Prize, but I just think it's pretty interesting that this North and South Korea is coming together. And do you think Trump actually made this happen?
Well, look, the liberals, even liberal policy experts that don't care for Trump at all, now these names I don't really know, but Ian Bremmer, for example, is a policy analyst. He said, but today's historic North-South Korea breakthrough does not happen without priority and pressure from the U.S. president. Trump deserves full credit. And he prefaced that by saying he didn't like a lot of the things Trump had been doing. pulling out of the Paris Accords, but he said in this case you had to do it, and you have to give him credit. Noah Schottman, let's get real. The press would be in the midst of a collective orgasm if this Korea summit happened under Obama's watch. So let's call the meeting what it is, an unalloyed good thing. Now, you have to say the North Koreans are experts at manipulating. They're experts at promising and not fulfilling. There is tons of things that can happen that will make this nothing. But it's probably the best scenario we've seen in decades with North Korea, and you have to give Trump credit.
This, what's his name? Kanye West?
Kanye. Kanye,
however you say that. What do you think's going on with him? Why is he catching so much slack right now?
My question is, why does he get so much attention?
He's catching so much slack because the Democrats have become dependent on having 90+% vote from the black community. And when you have a cultural icon, whether he's, that intellectually, capable of discussing some of these issues or not, when you have a cultural icon, break the mold. What they're worried about is that he's opened a door, and more black people will start to go, you know what? I'm getting more pay right now after Trump's policies. Matter of fact, there's a new poll right now, millennials not particularly sold on Trump, but they're actually becoming more and more appreciative of the Republican congressman. They're moving towards the Republican candidate because there was a young millennial black man quoted from Louisiana. He said, look, my paycheck went up, because of the tax bill that was passed. So Republicans are helping me on a day-to-day basis. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid people will actually start to say, you know what, maybe I need to look at this.
Here's an article that says Democrats losing support of millennials.
That's it. That's the study I was referencing.
Mm-hmm. Is that true, Franklin?
I think both parties are losing the support of millennials. That's what's not being reported there.
So where are the millennials?
Because they're increasingly disenchanted with the cynicism in American politics, which I understand.
But Franklin, that's an overarching point of the study. When you get into the study of the ones that are going to engage, they're moving more towards the Republicans at this point.
28%, it says, going towards.
Well, because they look at their paychecks. They're actually going, wow, look, this actually worked just like they said it was. And the Democrats did themselves no favors at all to have, in lockstep, voted against cutting taxes for the American citizens.
That would be why, for example, let's see here. This was Marco Rubio's comment this week. This is his statement. There's no evidence whatsoever that the GOP's corporate tax cuts are helping workers. That's Marco Rubio.
Well, he's
Republican.
Wrong. Then he's wrong.
Well, I'm just saying, if you want to know why people are cynical about the process, now you have it.
All right, here's Trump's numbers. U.S. economy grew 2.3% in the first quarter of 2018, beating expectations of 2%. They expected 2. He grew by 2.3%. They had a 2.9% growth in the fourth quarter of last year. They had forecast that to be at 2. The first quarter GDP tends to be sluggish because of some seasonal quirks. The labor market is near full employment. Businesses and consumer confidences are high. Wage growth actually has gone up for the American worker. That's why they're moving to the Republicans, because they see this. And Marco Rubio, I don't know what the context of that is, but if the context is open and fair, he's wrong.
I can only tell you that's what he said. It's just like the president's just fired Health and Human Services Director's comments this week. What did he say?
I don't know what.
He said, the changes we made to Obamacare are gonna raise everybody's premiums. That's what he said.
Well, that's because you can't do what Obamacare did. You all lied to us to begin with.
That's not what y'all said would happen, though.
Franklin,
the point is,
what is Obamacare?
The people are cynical because they know they keep getting lied to.
What is Obamacare?
Hang on, let me give you an analogy for what we tried to do with Obamacare, okay, Franklin? If I go out and I pick up a horse patty out of the pasture, and I put mayonnaise and mustard and cheese on it and mash it between two pieces of bread, it's still a horse patty, and it still tastes like crap to eat. That's what we tried to do with Obamacare. We took the horse patty, tried to do the best we could with it, but it's still a horse patty.
Pretty good analysis. You got anything, Franklin?
Sure. John's over here saying, John is the king of folksy maxims that mean nothing.
How can you compare that, Franklin, to anything else?
Well, let me just say, I will bow down to John because there's no question he knows more about horse crap than I do.
Yep, having fought the Democrats my whole life, I've learned a lot about horse patties. Let me give you.
Why are people cynical? Because he says, well, it was 2.6% this year. Okay.
Do you know how much difference that makes in our debt?
That happened like 3 times during the Obama years, and he said it was a disaster. Now it happens with Trump, and oh my God, what a wonderful development. Why are people cynical? Because they get that kind of crap all the time.
Let me give you...
Is it bad at 2.6, or is it great? Which is it?
Well, Obama averaged below 2 his entire
No,
term.
he did not. That's just a freaking lie.
Franklin,
it's not
he's
even
the
close to
only
the
president in history to have never hit 3% GDP growth in 8 years.
He hit 2.9 twice, though.
Jimmy Carter hit it in 4 years, and he's one of the worst presidents we've ever had.
And you've been telling me all year what a great job he's doing. So tell me what it is.
The trajectory is straight up, Franklin.
Don't tell me. Wait a minute. Don't tell me. Are you trying to argue for Obama being a good president, or
no? I'm trying to point
Obamacare?
out that you guys can't switch your argument every time there's an election.
Let me tell you
why.
what.
Stay consistent.
Is it Obamacare we're talking about?
We were talking about why people are cynical. Because
we were actually talking about Obamacare.
No, we didn't. I brought that up as one of the examples of where a Republican came out and made this concession that y'all said wouldn't happen.
So let me give you the perfect example of why Obamacare is horrible.
Okay.
Alfie Evans in Great Britain is why Obamacare is horrible.
That's what
to do with your party is selling socialized single-payer health care. They have even moved off of denying it. They don't deny it anymore. They want single-payer health care. Folks, read up about Alfie Evans. That's what you get with single-payer health care.
And here's
you
what
get a pair of parents told, you can't even remove your child from our care, even though it would have actually saved the national health system money. Italy had offered to treat them for free, had sent a plane. It cost the national health system absolutely nothing to let that little boy leave. And what did they do? They said, nope, you can't leave. And you know why? Because if he had been approved in Italy, they would have had to admit that their system of socialized medicine sucks.
And there is the absolute rank hypocrisy in everything the Republican Party says.
Yeah, because we care about a government that starves
that's right. You know what? Because your solution is just go to the free market and let them die, whether they have insurance or not.
They died at the government's hands, Franklin.
That's right.
They had a
free. Did.
Guess
You're
what?
right, John. But stop saying it's a moral position because all you care about is the free market.
Bureaucrats that you're defending ordered him to die.
As long as you die in the free market, it's okay.
Franklin, he had a chance to live in the free market.
There is absolutely nothing pro-life about the Republican Party.
Let me ask you a question.
Nothing.
Let me ask you a question, Franklin.
In fact,
Italy offered for free to fly him to Italy to treat him for free. Tell me what reason the government of Great Britain denied his request to leave.
No good reason, John. The point is
no, there's an excellent reason. No, there's an excellent reason.
You're being a total
Do you know what the excellent reason was?
Because you defend every day the system where people die every day from having no insurance.
That's not true, Franklin.
And you don't
that is
care.
absolutely not true. No one is ever denied care in America. No one is ever denied care in America.
It's just like saying you're
no one is
pro-life on
ever
abortion,
denied
but
care
once
in America.
They're born, they're on their own.
No one has ever denied care in America, Franklin, ever.
That's such a load of crap, John.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's a complete lie.
It is against the law for them to turn people away.
It's against the law in an emergency to turn them away.
Yes, it is.
But you can have a long-term illness that's going to kill you, and nobody has to pay for that.
Franklin, It wasn't costing the government of Britain anything.
I'm not defending them, John.
But wait a minute.
I'm saying this is completely hypocritical.
You don't want to admit the problem. The problem with the healthcare system in Britain is the same reason they built the Berlin Wall. You have to force people to stay in socialism, because if you let them leave, they'll all leave.
So when we did Obamacare, which is not socialism, by the way.
What is it? What is it?
It's government insurance through corporations. Corporations provide
government insurance.
There's a word for that. It's called big business in bed with big government.
Well, y'all would be the king of that.
No, we're not.
Yeah,
we don't
you
want
are.
that. I don't
and
want
the point is, you don't care what the outcome is as long as you say it's a free market.
The outcome of the bureaucracy in Great Britain was a little boy was starved to death.
Well, the outcome here is thousands of people die from having no insurance. So why is that better, John?
Franklin, thousands of people do not
Yes,
die from
they
having
do.
no insurance.
And it's completely ignorant.
And by
to
the
say
way,
otherwise.
your people gave everybody insurance, I saw it. I thought Obamacare was going to eliminate no insurance
would have,
people.
but for
no,
the
it
opposition.
didn't. It never did. It never hit its mark.
Yeah,
It never hit
yeah, well,
any
we
of its
did a lot
marks.
better than you guys
No, you
did
didn't.
before. Yeah, we
Actually,
did.
you did.
No, we didn't. We got more people covered than you ever dreamed of having covered.
Are you covered if you have a $5,000 deductible, Franklin? Are you covered, really? Hey, by the way, we'll treat you after the first $5,000.
You're covered for a catastrophic illness.
All I know is I had pretty good insurance till Obamacare came around. Then it stopped.
I think you retired, didn't you?
Well, not before that mess came about. Not before that mess came about.
Mm-hmm.
And then my deductible was $5,000
My
or
point is
something.
much more philosophical on this. When the government of Great Britain is actually going to save money to allow that baby to leave and go to Italy, and they refuse to allow the baby to go, there's a philosophical or a bureaucratic reason for that. Because on a business level, you'd say, let him go. You won't have to care for him. You'll actually save money. The reason they wouldn't let him go is because if other people saw him leave, and especially if he left and by chance happened to actually improve under the Italian medical care, they would see a mass exodus from the crappy. They're actually rationing care now over there, Franklin. First of the year, they postponed all surgeries, not elective, all surgery. They postponed over 50,000 surgeries in January and February in the British healthcare system because they just can't do it. The system is collapsing, and they don't want to admit it, and that's why they starved, and first they were going to cut his water off. They cut his water off for 6 hours. They finally forced him to give him water. Then they let that little boy starve to death rather than let him leave the country for fear that he might actually find success. By the way, do you know what was wrong with him? Do you know what was wrong with Alfie Evans? Do you know what was wrong?
It's a rare genetic condition.
Actually, it wasn't.
Well,
That's Charlie Gard. Charlie Gard, the first baby they let starve to death, had a rare condition. Guess what was wrong with Alfie Evans?
You tell me, John.
They don't know. They actually didn't even know what was wrong with him. So they wouldn't let a child that they didn't even know what was wrong with him. With Charlie Gard, they could at least claim, look, with this disease, it's never been treated, he's going to die. They didn't even know what was wrong with Alfie Evans. And by the way, at the same time that bureaucratic system was sentencing him to die by starvation, they were fawning over the new prince that was born in the royal family. Great system, Franklin. Glad you all think it's the model.
Well, I don't know if it's the model or not, but I do know in terms of all the statistics that people there have less heart disease, less diabetes.
Yeah, when you don't diagnose it, it doesn't get counted.
Better outcomes. Same thing in Canada.
Dead is dead, isn't it?
That's not true. It's like, for example, Franklin's side always points out that we have higher infant mortality rates. And we do have higher infant mortality rates. The reason we have it is because we count every infant.
You notice I didn't say anything about infants there, did I?
I'm telling you,
did I say anything about infants?
Okay.
All right.
I didn't say anything. I'm talking about
your
grown-ups.
side talked about infant mortality. Matter of fact, the Democrats used infant mortality when they were selling Obamacare, and they knew that the numbers were a lie.
All right, I got to ask this question. Will you work for $15 an hour?
If that's the best I could get, I would.
Would you work for $15 an hour, Jim?
Yes.
So Bernie wants everybody to work for $15 an hour, and then he's going to take care of everything.
Oh, you're talking about the new socialist Democrat plan.
Right.
Universal pay. So everybody's going to get paid whether they work or not.
Right, $15 an hour. So everybody gets $15 an hour. right?
Whether you're working
Isn't
or
that
not.
the new plan?
Universal
No, that's
pay,
not
universal income.
That's not his exact plan.
What
Not
is
that I like his plan. I don't.
You don't? Okay. So,
you're just mixing up two different parts of his plan.
All right.
One part of his plan is that the minimum wage gets raised to $15 an hour.
The other part is that you get paid whether you work or not.
But it's a lesser
Universal pay.
so you don't get any of this.
Look, call it what you want. Universal pay is
You don't-
socialism.
you don't
The
get-
Democrat Party are not Democrats anymore. They're socialists. Blatantly socialist at this point.
That by the way, that plan's not going to go anywhere. But
The
that's a
fact
different question.
that the guy that was almost you all's presidential nominee and may in fact be the nominee next time is floating it tells you all you need to know about the Democrat Party today.
Real quick, we're about out of time. The border. What's going on at the border right now?
Which border? Because the Canadians are now demanding that we enforce our immigration laws stronger because they're tired of people crossing the United States into Canada. There's your good liberals that criticize the President Franklin are now demanding that we keep the migrants from coming into Canada.
What's going on down there?
Well, that ought to scare you more. That immigrants think Canada's a better destination.
It's because
than
Trump cracked down on them. It's Nigerians for the most part. It is. Read the story. It's Nigerians, and they're asking us to keep them from crossing into Canada because Canada's becoming, guess what, overburdened.
What about Mexico? Is it overburdened?
Well, I mean, Mexico allowed that caravan to come through, and my problem is Franklin's people sent lawyers down there to represent them, and you've got Moonbeam, get Jerry Brown over in California saying, oh, yeah, we should let them come. Where do you draw the line? How many people live south of our border? You want all of South America to move here? I mean, is there any limit to this? Are we allowed to protect our country at all?
The limit is doing a system that works.
The limit is 1 million people a year, Franklin. That's not enough for you?
Most of these people aren't moving here to establish residency. They're coming here and leaving, coming here and leaving, coming here and
Actually,
leaving.
this group is not. They're all claiming asylum.
Okay, well, we have a law that allows them to do that.
Well, guess
then
what,
there's
Franklin?
a process to determine whether it's legitimate
I'm
or
going
not.
to go along
and if
with
it's
the
not,
president.
they get sent
There's
back.
a lot of S-hole countries in the world, and I'm sure most of the people that live in them would like to live here. Are you going to bring them all here?
It depends, John.
Yes,
Whether
that's what
they're
they'd like
under-
to do.
Under
Their votes, aren't they?
They'll vote Democrat.
Their votes, aren't they? You think? Do you think President Trump's being treated fairly right now?
In what area?
Well, do you think Mueller needs to continue this investigation anymore? Do you think? Do you think he needs to ask
They're not, they've
President
already
Trump
more or less
questions?
admitted they're not going to find. They have no collusion whatsoever, which was
admitted nothing.
They
What
have
about
to.
what about Mueller's questions being?
Well, the
let
first
out?
question is who leaked them.
So,
There's
yeah.
a lot of debate about that.
Yeah, I mean, is that a system that we need to
Well, it
trust?
depends whether the president leaked it or not. That's the question.
Well, but you still should look at the questions, Franklin. The questions are, and most lawyers looked at the questions, even liberal lawyers, and said, this is a perjury trap. That's what they're doing. There's nothing in there trying to get at collusion. There's all the questions in there are designed
Actually,
to
there
get
are
him.
some questions in there that get to
I'll tell you what.
At least that's what your roommate, Jonathan Turley, said on
There's
the,
a big
on TV this
investigation
morning.
coming down that we should have some answers to by next week. So
I saw,
think next
I
week's
saw
show.
a wonderful,
Next week's
just
show's gonna be
absolutely
good.
wonderful video this morning of 19 different Republicans talking about how much integrity and fairness is in Rod Rosenstein as they now seek to destroy him. So
You mean like you all destroyed the doctor? Like John Tester put out rumors and blatant...
and then the Republican chairman of that committee said he has no problem at all with the way John Tester handled it.
calling him the candy man? And the Secret Service has already debunked 2 of the main allegations and said we have absolutely no
According
record
to the
whatsoever.
Republican chairman of that, there's more information that Tester didn't release. That's what he said. I don't know. He's a
Well, maybe you
Republican,
need
so
to
I have
talk
to
to
question
Obama
the source.
because the last review Obama wrote of the man, he said he should be promoted over all other officers.
As a doctor, maybe so.
Well, look, that was an argument we could have had. Is he qualified to run the administration of the Veterans Affairs? Not, is he a pill pusher? Not, let's destroy him personally.
Okay.
And by the way, we're out of time, but Netanyahu pretty much proved that Obama was
Actually,
either an idiot or he was a liar.
What Netanyahu proved is that he can't be trusted yesterday.
Oh, let me see. They go and they actually smuggle out the original documents, a half ton of documents out of Tehran, and
From
you
when,
can't
John?
say that that's a valuable
From when, John?
thing.
From when? Tell the truth.
Some of it's 2015.
2003.
Right, when they had the program, but guess what? They said,
before-
Franklin, the agreement from Obama was that they would admit everything and they would destroy everything. They didn't admit it.
In
B,
Israel,
they hid it.
people in Israel were laughing at that
You know
speech.
what, Franklin? You need to go live under the mullahs then, because you obviously trust them a hell of a lot more
trust
than anyone
anybody.
with common sense would. They lied.
I
They have
clearly
a
don't.
nuclear-
I clearly don't trust this president to tell us the truth. However, that's the problem.
Why do you feel that way?
Because he keeps.
Do you not think he's doing things that are good?
I think you could argue.
What makes you think he's just guilty of all these things?
Because
whatever the
many
libs
things
say
are
about it.
demonstrably false, and he continues to say them.
Like what? Give me an example.
It's like yesterday. They issued a statement yesterday clarifying their statement from Monday. Monday, they issued a statement saying that Netanyahu's speech showed conclusively that Iran has a nuclear weapons program.
Okay.
Yesterday, last night, they issued a clarification saying, no, we didn't mean has, we meant had.
Has and had.
But they do.
There's a difference.
Franklin, no.
No.
Has and had. That's
There's a
the
difference.
issue.
Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State, just said in his congressional testimony 3 weeks ago that they were complying with the agreement as far as he could tell.
As far as he could tell, they've lied. Netanyahu proved they lied.
No, he didn't.
Franklin, they
He
said
was
they
talking about something 15 years
You're
ago.
missing the point. The baseline, Franklin, the baseline of the agreement
They
was...
either got in a program or they
They
don't
do have
now.
a program. They
And
have yellow
didn't-
cake
and
enrichment.
Netanyahu
They have
didn't say that.
U-235 enrichment, and they have centrifuges
Netanyahu-
under a mountain.
So now
they hid all of this.
So now you believe Iran.
No, I'm not playing that.
Well,
We've
that's
got-
what you
we've
said.
got people on the ground doing inspections
No,
there.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
You believe
You've
Iran.
also got Netanyahu under an indictment in his own country for corruption and bribery.
What's the Fordham site?
For God's sake.
What's the Fordham site in Iran?
According to the investigators, it's not
You
that.
mean the investigators that aren't allowed to enter it? They
They're
don't
able
allow.
to
They don't
do-
allow it to be
They're
inspected.
doing a radiation leak checks there,
Not
John.
from the inside. They're not allowed in.
John, all these freaking experts know nothing, but you guys know it all.
Team
Come on.
smart
I can't
power
believe-
screwed the world.
I can't believe you'd take up for Iran.
I'm not taking up for Iran.
In order to cover for
Listen
Obama.
to yourself. Listen to yourself.
The president could be arguing that we need to do a new deal that does better.
Why
that.
has Israel been our friend up until Obama was president, and then he kind of
Because we give them $25 billion a year. That's why.
Look, this is real
$25 billion
simple.
of your money.
Team Smart Power just last spring said that everything Trump was doing was going to lead us to the brink of war on the Korean Peninsula. We are now on the brink of peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Do you think we ought to take
perfect
an
sense.
airplane full of money to North Korea? Maybe
First
buy
of
them
all, it
out?
was their money, not ours. Number two.
We're late. We got to go. Bye. See you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey.